Nice, dude.
There we go.
Struggling on that one.
Yeah, it just came through. Cool.
Solid. Dude, perfect. Yo, I didn't know you were already leading breathing seminars.
What's that?
I didn't know you were already leading breathing seminars.
I've done one formal one.
Okay, word. Nice.
Yeah. So that was with kind of like a business group of people, kind of HR team, human resources team, and did a little bit on just general complete breathing and took them through a couple really basic exercises. It was more geared towards stress management and relaxation. So we're focusing especially on the exhale, drawing that out, getting people to kind of calm down a bit. So a little more parasympathetic nervous system driven.
Nice, dude.
But yeah.
I was just talking to a dude who, our coffee conversation has gone a few places. I was talking to a guy who was saying he thought he was living in adrenal fatigue for years.
Oh, wow.
Never like relaxed. And I was like, yeah, that was part of the reason I got into it. But I mean, not overdoing it with coffee, but also knowing how to just relax with breathing has been huge.
Yeah.
So I guess I didn't, like when we were first talking about it, I thought it was just like an interest or a hobby of yours. I didn't know that you were like had enough knowledge and skills to be talking to people about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a beginner, I'd say, for sure. I haven't been doing this for years or decades. At least teaching, I've been practicing myself for years, but a lot of, and we've talked about this before, a lot of what I teach comes from yoga, and some science. Yoga is science, but that's another conversation. But a lot of the yoga pranayamas from alternate nostril, breath of fire, Vastrika, some of those, and just full complete breathing, because that's, yoga calls it yogic breathing, but, just breathing fully, opening up the rib cage and getting the diaphragm to move properly, and also a little bit into the chest there, and just learning how to breathe properly, because I do massage therapy a lot too, and I notice how people struggle to breathe deeply and completely, and they don't know how to use the breath as a tool to relax deeper. So that's another area of interest of mine, is using it as a tool to relax deeper, both in daily life and in a massage, because I noticed both, like maybe in the beginning of the massage, people are their breathing mechanics are all over the place, and it's unrhythmic or very like huffy puffy. And then as it goes on, as people kind of calm down a little bit, and they start to their breathing becomes very rhythmic and very like slow and steady, and what's the word for it? Very subtle almost. Like it's very slow and steady, and it's not like huge breathing, which I know you talk a lot about. I've seen you've been posting about just massive inhales and exhales, and how that's maybe not the ideal. So maybe you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, dude. I mean, and that would be another conversation for another day, is like how to get the most out of a massage, because I've been getting a few massages recently, and I feel like I have a cheat code to get more out of it, because I do know breathing and stuff.
Yeah, totally do.
But my background is rooted in science, although like I'm still trying to understand science, and when you try and explain it to people, you're like, oh, maybe I don't have the best understanding of this, but that from that oxygen advantage, those are some of the key things that it hits on, is breathing light. So that's what you were talking about with the subtlety, and where it shouldn't be so effortful. It should be more effortless, and kind of similar to like people know, okay, good resting heart rate is low. We wouldn't want our heart beating like this all the time. Yeah. That's exhausting. We want just a nice subtle. It's the exact same thing with the breathing. If our lungs have to go like this constantly, it'd be better if they just super relaxed, breathing light, breathing slow, which like that kind of goes in with the relaxed thing. It's more of like a cadence kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the deepness, that's big in the mechanics, like you were talking about, where like I always thought as a kid, one, I was breathing through my mouth and my nose, which we'll talk about, but it was always, and dude, I had asthma as a kid, and I would go to the doctors and they would do these breathing things with me, and the doctor would say, or even like any doctor, take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Not understanding like, oh, it should be into like this part down here, and not just the belly out, but like the whole 360 of rib cage, lower back, and creating that core strength that we're looking for, that like people are always talking about.
Yeah. I like the analogy I like to share with people is if you think of your torso as a balloon, you want to, when you blow into a balloon and it inflates, it's expanding in all directions. So like you just said, out the side, the rib cage, out the front a little bit, even out the back. That's a little more subtle, but you're expanding your torso in all directions.
Yeah, I like that, dude, because at first I was big. I got obsessed with the diaphragm. Like, if this is my belly, just my belly coming out.
Yeah.
I didn't really understand the whole thing, but the balloon, that's a really good analogy.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's the LSD of the oxygen advantage, the light, slow, and deep, and we call that breathing right.
Okay, and is that for daily just walking around, sitting at your desk, or is that also incorporated into, I know you're into the diving and exercise and stuff, or is that a totally different technique or approach, or does it stay the same?
I would say that's the same for everything. If we're talking super high level performance training, then that's a slightly different conversation. I'd say it still is the same, but so I always like to train my breathing. I'll put a little bit of effort into training it casually so that when I'm sitting around doing whatever, working, playing, it's good. And then when I'm exercising, when my mind's not on my breathing, then it's at that point, it's subconscious. My body knows to breathe light. And then the only thing I have to do effortless or put effort into is making sure my mouth stays closed. Because I saw you put out a solid thing earlier about Vo2 Max.
Yeah.
Dude, that was awesome. I meant to share that earlier. Talk a little bit more about that.
I don't know if I can speak on it very in depth, but basically what I was saying is that, like, we often think they tested some people at their Vo2 Max, which is, just the amount of volume of oxygen you can get at a given moment, I think. Do you want to give a better definition on that? Do you know off the top of your head?
No, it is basically like you're saying, how much oxygen can you utilize in a given minute of like intense physical exercise.
Yeah, so it's really common in cardio, like running and cycling and all that stuff. And what they found is that, well, it's often believed that you have to go to the mouth breathing when you're at that high intensity, those highest intensities. But they measured, I think it was 6 months apart, they measured people's Vo2 max, and then they trained them doing nasal breathing, testing them again in 6 months, and they could reach their Vo2 max at nostril, while breathing through their nostrils, I should say. And that's something, like, I'm not quite there in my own running, but I've noticed over time as my body's adapted to breathing nasally, I can go faster and still breathe through my nose than I could, 6 months ago, it's crazy. It really is. Like, oh my gosh. Nice. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, because a lot of people think, like gets in your head, you can't do as much because the nose is kind of regulating how much air you're taking in. It's like letting you bring in less. So at first, when you start training hard, you're not going to be able to perform at the same level as if you were breathing through your mouth or doing what you're already doing. But just like that study said, a little bit of effort, a little bit of time and focus, you can be where you were at, but better. And that way, when you're at that point, you're not huffing and puffing as much, but you understand, your body is actually adapted to do more with less.
Yeah.
Freaking awesome, dude. Yeah, I experienced that training for rugby back in the day. Always thirsty. Like the water break came around, I was exhausted. I was like, finally a break. Like, I need water. I had a hard time talking. In rugby, you need to be yelling constantly, but you're also running at like maximum velocity sometimes, so it's a lot. So like I couldn't communicate as well on the field. But then implementing all this, you know, I was now the louder guy, and then the water break came around. I felt fine. I didn't need water. I'm like back already on the field. Like, come on, guys, like let's hurry up. So that was the coolest change. But let's break this down a little bit more into like why we'd want to improve our breathing.
I mean, obviously there's a lot of approaches to it. I come at it and keep it very simple and say like breathing is the first form of life that you're bringing into your body, the first form of energy. And, you know, you could say sunlight too, but yeah, like you can go months without food, weeks without, or weeks without food, days without liquid, but you can only go minutes without oxygen and air. So you have to learn to breathe properly. And it's obviously very closely tied to the nervous system and your ability to just function at your best, both in performance and being able to relax kind of the other side of things. So like ramping up with the sympathetic nervous system and then cooling down with the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's really good for mental, emotional health. And yeah, I just think it's the most accessible tool we have to calm ourselves down or heat up. You know what I mean? It's always there. If you don't know how to use the breath, you can sometimes just feel lost in your own inner turmoil or like emotional states, and you're just like ebbing and flowing. But if you learn to use your breathing as a tool, it can just mean the world to your mental health, I've found. So what do you think though?
Dude, I'm totally on board with that. I mean, I love that, always bringing up that, not even an analogy, just a real life situation of the food, water, air. So it's like, well, so then we need air, so we need to figure out how to do it. And also like which also means we're breathing a lot more than we're eating or drinking. You know, like you and I also have nutrition approaches that we try and help people out with the Purium superfoods, because we do have to eat. You know, that's not something we can avoid. But even more so, we have to breathe. Like,
Yeah.
and we're breathing so many times per day. So if that's off, that's like us taking a walk with like our feet just like all messed up. Like I don't, you know, like if I don't want to get too much into it, but like walking like this as opposed to walking like this.
Yeah.
That's just going to compound and add a lot worse. And then and then two, I should say, how strong of a tool it is, and it's free, you know?
Yeah.
So you kind of alluded to it there with warming up, cooling down, like ramping yourself up, relaxing yourself, whether it be in the morning or right before bed. Like it's always right there. So if we figure it out, we can do it whenever.
Yeah.
Do it for free.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many different breathing techniques you can do to, you know, depending on your desired outcome is. Like it can be a tool for kind of getting deeper into your subconscious and letting go of emotions. You can use it as a tool to like bring more energy and, you know, disperse mental fog, you know, with the breath of fire specifically. And then like with the alternate Nasal, for example, that's, I know UW-Madison did some studies on, like in yoga, they say it's balancing the left and right sides of the body, and UW-Madison did some studies on that, how it balances the left and right brain hemispheres, which is, you know, left brain's more like that analytical, direct, logical, straight to the point, structured, and then the right being like the feminine, creative, expressive, and intuitive side, and helps just communication between these parts of your brain. So you just helps you be a more balanced individual. So I just like the breath because like how you can use it is endless. Like you can use it any way you want it to do anything you want with.
Which kind of gets into the what, which I was going to talk about. But one of the biggest things too is that like I don't really have super bad anxiety, but occasionally I'll get a little bit nervous energy, and my mind's always racing. It's usually good things. Occasionally, you know, some self-doubt or concern, you know, may filter in. But either way, just always knowing that we can return to monitor our breathing.
Yeah.
And if we need to, like, notice, okay, I monitor it, it's cool, I'm good to go. I'll just stay focused on this. Or if I monitor it and I'm, you know, totally stressed out, really anxious about whatever it is, stuck in traffic, got to get somewhere, got to be here, got to do this after this and this. Checking my breathing. Oh man, it's totally out of whack.
Yep.
So now let me put my focus into not those concerns, but more of, let me get my breathing back to where it needs to be. Because if I center my breathing, all the thoughts and the actions are probably going to be centered right along with that.
Yes, that's well said.
Thank you, William. So the why or the how is the biggest one. So like, do you have any super easy to understand tools to controlling your breathing in day to day?
In day to day, yeah, it kind of depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to, I guess it comes down to bring more awareness to your breathing throughout the day. And kind of like you just said, when you're finding yourself nervous or anxious or stressed out or even happy or joyful, just being aware of how your emotional states and mental states are tied to your breathing patterns. So just genuinely thinking more about breathing is going to help. And then if you're looking for like a practice, I recommend like just, let's see if I can turn this down a little bit here. Pretty much putting your, so like my ribs are right here. I put half my hand on my rib, half my hand on my belly. You can go like that. Or you can do one on rib, one on belly, and just feeling that breathing. And just doing a couple breaths like that gives you a tactile sensation of the breath and everything that goes involved in it, and just helps bring your awareness to it and experience it more fully. I think, you can get really complicated with the breathing, but if you're just trying to start out, just feeling what a complete breath feels like might be an entirely new experience. So that's usually where I like to start.
Which have you seen people not be able to get a deep, full breath?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I see sometimes people breathe like, how do I say this? They kind of like you were saying before with the asthma, like they try to breathe fully, but it's all like chest and neck. It's like I can barely almost do that, but it's like, it's breathing way up here, and your lungs and rib cage are like down here, and then down into your diaphragm is obviously, right there, kind of the rib cage there. So it's, yeah, I see it all the time going back to massage people. And I coach people on this during massages on how to kind of let go more and breathe just calmly and relaxed. Because most people have never been told how to do that. No, we were never taught how to breathe, which is wild to me. So that's why it's like keeping it simple, like learning to breathe fully, because most people kind of like, and that's all chest and neck. And like, you're not getting to those deeper lobes of the lungs where like the bulk of the alveoli are, which is where the oxygen and like the gas exchange occurs. So yeah.
We call that paradoxical breathing when it's all up here.
Okay.
You ever notice how like even when we're doing it, but also like what people like, it's usually mouth breathing that causes it to be up here.
Yeah.
Like once you start figuring out the nose, it becomes a lot more automatic to filter it a lot down deeper.
Yeah. So what got you into the nose breathing then?
We were 22 and trying to figure out everything: breathing, eating, exercising, food, like all of it, just to become better rugby players. And the oxygen advantage, like he goes in, that whole first part of the book is the benefits of nasal breathing, just how it filters and cools the air coming in. So, and it also is a smaller hole, so it almost fights that over breathing that we were talking about. And then there's a bunch of other stuff about nitric oxide and
Yep.
free radicals and all that stuff. It's more complicated science, but the nose being for breathing and the mouth being for eating is the easy way to think about it.
Yeah. Oh, so I didn't know that oxygen advantage is what got you into breathing from the
Oh,
get-go? That was the first
yeah,
thing?
that was, I read this book, and it was, you know, those books you just cannot put down because you're like,
Yes, sir.
and I'm just underlining everything. And at the same exact time, I'm learning to scuba dive. So I'm actually pissed off at scuba diving because I'm having to go there every Monday and go,
Yeah.
and I was like, there's got to be another way. And I look up there, and there are these full face masks where you can breathe through your nose. And I was like, oh man, I'll never get to that. But a few months ago, I actually took a course to teach in those full face masks. And it was the first time using one, and it was fucking awesome, dude. It was so
Yeah.
cool.
Game changer?
Oh, the most fun I've had scuba diving since I can remember.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. But so I also see the shallow, and to be honest, it's harder on scuba diving because we do have to breathe through our mouth. But I see a lot of the shallow breathing, and I don't want to get too much into scuba diving, but we control our buoyancy with our lungs. So almost like we can float or sink with how much air is in our lungs. They're like little balloons that raise us up or sink us down if they're empty.
Mm-hmm.
And because people don't take full breaths, they just take these little baby breaths, we're not really using to our full capacity, where I'm over here like this. And if I need to drop or raise, I can play around with that very easily. So it makes the whole teaching process a lot more difficult. And then because you have to breathe, like the gas exchange is very important. That's also the danger of breathing shallow, is that dead airspace gets left in there. We're not doing a full like fill in, wipe out kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
So that just compounds, and then nervous breathing compounds on itself, and it starts this cycle of anxiety that leads to panic attack a lot of times. And I see the people's eyes light up and they freak out and they bolt to the surface.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, imagine you have to stay pretty even keel and relaxed while you're scuba diving.
Yeah, but you know, if you're not, like, your breathing will make you not be that way.
Yeah.
And then you not being that way messes up your breathing more, which just
Yeah.
vicious cycle, man.
Yeah. And that's like what you just said there, is that cycle is whether you're underwater scuba diving or like sitting at your work, like at your desk working. You see that all the time. It's like you can't stay relaxed, so then your breathing goes all cattywampus. So then you can't be more relaxed even more, and you get all stressed, and then it just on and on and on.
Shoot with the question, brother. Got a question, and then I can share my the most simple approach to breathing I have is breathe through your nose. And I know some people have blocked noses, like I did when I first started.
Same.
How do you learn to consciously nose breathe in stressful situations? I got an answer. Unless so, practicing in non-stressful situations. So I have just a 10-minute practice. Ideally, I'm doing it 3 times a day. I'll be honest, it's usually 1 or 2 times. Morning, afternoon, and evening would be best. But myself personally, I breathe, lay down, breathe through my nose, and just try and take the softest, slowest breaths that I can. And slow it down so much so that I'm almost developing a little bit of an air hunger. But that goes, I don't want to go too deep into the practice, but it really does come from, the idea there is that we're building up this air hunger and we're creating a stressful situation, but at the same time, we're training ourselves to be okay with it and be comfortable and also still nose breathe. Because at the end of the day, like, the CO2 builds up, it is extremely uncomfortable and stressful and painful, but we are okay. That's not going to kill us as high CO2 levels. Do you have any?
Pretty much what you said, practicing, just like you said, sitting down a couple times a day, morning or night, and learning to breathe through the nose, and just practicing that even and slow and quiet, like you said. And then also if you catch yourself in a stressful situation, just go to the breath. just go right to the breath and breathe through the nose, same sort of rhythm. And once you train the body, like the nervous system too, then it's easier if you practice it just when you're not stressed. Then you just have that tool to use whenever you do need it.
Okay.
Cool.
Nice, dude. But I think the easy starting point, like we were saying, is just focusing on it as much as possible. You know, there's a lot of different tools that you and I both have to share for getting deeper into observing it and practicing it and altering it, and then specific situations, this happens, do this. But obviously that you can't just throw that at someone or even myself and expect that to land. So I think the awareness is always going to be the key first step. Are we breathing through our nose or our mouth? Simple. Are we? Or, you know, that's an obvious one.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, there are ways to unblock the nose, because some people say, oh, I have to breathe through my mouth. My nose is clogged up. I was the same way. Simple unclogging. And then once you just start working those pipes, they stay free and clear.
Absolutely.
And that's really where it starts out, right, dude?
Yeah, I agree. Breathing through the nose while running helps me clear everything up too.
Yeah, how's the running?
I won't get into that right now, but that's a whole other conversation. Wow. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was never, and this is Rob has been talking about this as a story I've been telling myself. I've never been a long distance runner, and I tell myself that story, but it is something that I've been playing around with over the past few years with the nose and just finding my pace. Sometimes it's a pretty slow pace, but that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Beautiful, bro. You want to kick it here?
Let's call it.
We'll play around a little bit more on another date. I really like talking about breathing. I appreciate you talking about it with me, and not a lot of people, they usually kind of just stare at me when I start talking.
Yeah. No, dude, it's been cool talking to you about it. And we're both into breathing, but we have a little bit different background in what led us to breathing. You know, you with the scuba diving, me with the yoga and the running and massage and all that, but it's cool. I mean, it ties us all together.
Yeah, I mean, where we're seeing it, I think, is the coolest thing. You know, you're touching someone and feeling it, and I'm like straight up observing. You know, like we can't get away from it, which I love.
Yeah,
and I just want to help more people understand it and take that time to give them that tool, because it's so good giving them food or water or movement, but if we don't have the breathing down, a lot of it is kind of useless.
Yeah,
just not doing as much as it could.
For sure.
Oh yeah, bro.
All right, man.
Take it easy. Enjoy your Saturday.
Yeah, you too, bro. Peace.